And in it, I asked 36 questions in the area of math, logical, intra-self or interpersonal, which is self, music, interpersonal, which is different from intrapersonal. Interpersonal is more people oriented. Intra is self, person that really prefer to be by themselves, like to read books, etc. Linguistic, which is word. Kinesthetic, which is activity or body. And then visual. Those are the categories that I use as a quick check in the survey. Our next section will be called Too Much Schooling, Too Little Education, and it's a cultural perspective. That will be number 6. Who are you? Are you really who you say you are? Are you all you can be? And then finally, who is fueling your development? You and see where you need to. Okay. This section, 2-6. Who are you? Are you really who you say you are? Are you all you can be? Who's fueling your development? It's in too much schooling and too little education. A cultural perspective. Understanding brain-based learning is a fantastic method of individual assessment, and it is certainly a necessary teaching tool. This audio would be incomplete without recognizing scholars who insist too much schooling and not enough education lends itself to a robotic life. The story that I told you of the teacher making an appeal to the city council inferred many of the scholars were independent producers of knowledge. Once an independent learner, they were able to reach their goal of being entrepreneurs, CEOs, and boss design status at its finest. They were able to develop an economic-based system of networking. In other words, it's okay to work for someone, but at the end of the training, it is important to have skills in your own stories and shops. This is a universal goal in a free world. It's called economics, money. The great scholars and professors of Afrocentric studies, Dr. Malana Karinga and Dr. Molefi K. Asante, were on the forefront in teaching cultural relevance. Karinga introduced the Nguzu Saba, 7 Black Principles of Daily Living. Allow me to just go through the 7. It's very, very important in our community. Cultural perspective. They also call it Kwanzaa, but Kwanzaa is the celebration. The 7 Black Principles, or otherwise known as Nguzu Saba, Umoja, unity, Kujichagulia, self-determination, Ujima, collective work and responsibility. Number 4, Ujama, cooperative economics. Number 5, Nia, which means purpose. Kuumba is creativity. Imani is faith. Some novice learners calls it Kwanzaa. That's wrong. Kwanzaa is the celebration at the end of the year with daily practice of the principle, the Nguzu Saba. This is a principle of living, and it was researched for people of the African diaspora in mind. The intent is beneficial, though, for all races and ethnicity in the interest of moral living and connectedness. Dr. Asante's work on revolutionary pedagogy is based on forward-thinking leadership. His work has influenced the fields of sociology, intercultural communication, and psychology. Dr. Asante is known for his work on Afrocentricity, the theory of social change. So why is all of that important? It is very important to learn how the missing pieces throughout our schooling has deprived our children of rich history related to the great contributions from people of color. Let us begin with some relevant facts. Most urban schools have a majority of white teachers in front of black children. Many do not have any background in cultural knowledge of black and brown children. They are taught from a European system and perspectives. For one, our story is told from the point of the transcontinental slave trade. Feeding students a fallacy is a mind-altering trick. It is our belief black scholars must tell our own story to change the narratives of the struggle and its impact on the education of a people. The adage holds true. If you don't know where you've been, you won't know where you're going. We talk about resilience in children of color. It is important to have a theoretical foundation, the mechanism to bring out the internal workings of greatness. For over 40 years, I followed the works of other great leaders and scholars to develop my philosophy on how to move our educational agenda using cultural relevance. You know, every lived experience will shape and guide your journey. It is important to center yourself around people who think like you, whatever thoughts you have to meet your plans. I may not have understood the civil rights movement had it not been for the warriors of that era in the 60s, warriors such as Malcolm X and Dr. King. Unlike the 21st century parents, my mom didn't have that critical thinking mentality to explain what it all meant. My first introduction to Black history was in the 11th and 12th grade by the grace of this Afro dashiki wearing young African American male teacher, Dr. Andrew Ray, who was recruited from the South to the North. His groundwork was our high school transformation, a model taken from Malcolm X. I am somebody. Also at the local level, I must acknowledge the people who helped shape my way of thinking while my mind was an empty vessel. The issue of lead paint was first introduced to me at the age of 14 by my mentor, Dr. David A. Anderson, also known as Sankofa. To this day, research continues on the devastating effects it has had on our mental and physical development. Dr. Anderson would continue to serve as my mentor in the school district where he retired from Director of Parent Affairs. In the community, we know him as Sankofa, director of our local Kwanzaa chapter. At the adult level, someone I considered a true warrior, my friend, retired history teacher, currently a professor at a local university, Howard J. Eagle. This fearless education warrior contends systematic racism has marginalized our educational tenets. We're always at the starting line, even when our work has been established. I was naive for many years about the systemic racism in the books, society, and in high places. Much work is needed to eradicate what he identifies as the tripod beast and illness of individual, institutional, and structural racism. His persistence is definitely respected. My spiritual mentors, Dr. Tyleek John Walker and Minister Shaniti Nuhas Kawida Avery to Blackman infused the spiritual realm of cultural teachings. Both ministers are similar in the aspect of bringing flavor to the faith-based teachings. Dr. Talik was my college professor who reminded us to know thyself is to understand why we think, act, and do certain things. He would share firsthand knowledge of his active role in the Tuskegee Airmen. So empty, I was mesmerized and amazed by his wisdom and knowledge. It was much later when I truly understood the point of implementing a knowing concept. Dr. Talik would hold the position as senior pastor of Friendship Baptist Church in Rochester, New York, and remain on the mission to enlighten the mind spiritually. Minister Kawida's unique teachings is taken from Karinga, Asante, and a culmination of Afrocentric scholars. My understanding of the Afrocentricity was further developed under his ministry. Minister Kawida reminds us the battle will not begin until we close ranks. We must align ourselves and use the concept of personal responsibility to claim our rightful place in society. In the area of cultural relevance, my teaching pedagogy would not have been proficient for my students had it not been for the leadership of Dr. Susan Goodwin, director of the Rochester Teacher Center and author of several published books. Goodwin has been instrumental in bringing in scholars that will be the catalyst for change. Although the list of scholars in this area are long, the work on Parents Take Charge was influenced and motivated by some of the intellectuals whose work continues to resonate to the level of my takeaway. I've had the honor of my soul being fueled by inspiring Black intellectuals. Dr. Garrett Duncan, Dr. Joyce E. King, Dr. Wes Olanti, Dr. Norma Limon, Barati K. Kalefi, and the most talked about topic on post-traumatic slave syndrome by Dr. Joy DeGruy. The compensation of $41 an hour for professional development sessions were an incentive. But I'll tell you, I would have paid to be in a seat at their table. I can see the revolution is now being televised. My only question is, are you willing to prepare yourself to take charge? Remember, opportunity comes when you prepare for the future. A change without the first principle of the Nguzo Saba, which is unity, becomes another fashion statement. I trust it will happen. A marathon is taking place. Stepping out of that circle of fame to create a bridge is my goal, and Parents Take Charge, hold them accountable. Years of networking and attending local and out-of-town conferences allowed me the opportunity to compare notes. Some of the notes were repetitive, with small impact on changes. Intellectuals that were unique to me had a salient effect on my clipboard for future contact. One such recent contact is the work of Dr. G. Renee Gray in Tennessee. I have been in communications with her over the past several years, as well as follow her research and blogs on How Dare We Not Be Brilliant. In fact, my interest to key train one of her programs was treated with benign neglect at two different schools. We do know the powers to be would prefer the pathological attachment to the status quo. What other reason is there to idle a child's mind? My mom would say an idle mind is the devil's workshop. I believe it was taken from scriptures. I can see Dr. Gray's proposed plan readily